Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and this is another how to play rules tutorial. I'm not going to be going into the very basic rules. I'm going to be going into something that a lot of people have a hard time understanding because it was introduced in 6th edition and is a little hard to follow until you really learn the basics of it, and then once you get it, it's easy. And that is multiple cover saves. And that is where a unit who is being fired at benefits from more than one cover save. Not a single model who benefits from more than one, because then you just take the best one, but a unit that has different cover saves. Let's take a look at an example so you can see what I mean, and then we'll work out how to actually resolve this in a real game. Here we have a situation where 4 Necron warriors are facing off against a group of 8 Tyrannid Termagants. Now we're going to pretend that it's the Necron warriors shooting phase. They are all within rapid fire range because they're within 12 inches, and so they will have 8 shots in total. Now before we go to make those shots, we have to take a look at what's going to happen. As we see, we have Tyrannid Termagants in 3 different kinds of cover. The first one over here is in ruins, and that would confer a 4+ cover save. These 3 over here are in area terrain, which confers a 5+ cover save. And then these 3 back here are out in the open, and so do not get a cover save whatsoever. I purposely positioned the Necron warriors so that they could see these 3 without worrying about obscuring. If just one of the Necron warriors was far enough over, maybe if we moved it like this, that when he looks through, this space is partially covered by terrain, then that one Termagant would get cover. So I want to keep these guys in a location where everybody will get cover saves. So we'll just do it like that. So how does this work? Well, let's say that they just do a basic shot. So all 4 of them are just going to fire at this Termagant squad and kind of see what happens. Let's work that out. Now, as I said, Necron warriors' weapons have rapid fire, so we're going to have 8 shots in total. Their ballistic skill is 4, so they're going to be hitting on a 3+. So let's see what happens here. So we roll pretty average here, and we get 6 hits. Let's remove the 1 and the 2. Now the strength of the Necron warrior's weapon is 4, and the toughness of the Termagants is 3. So once again, we need a 3+ in order to wound. I might have to fudge this to make sure we get enough. Nope, I will not. There are 5 wounds to be allocated, so I remove this 2. Now the AP of the Necron warrior's weapons negates the armor save of the Termagants. Therefore, we have to fall back to a cover save. Now, I've seen this done in different ways, and most of them are done incorrectly. Some people will look at this and say, well, what do the majority of the Termagants have? And that's the cover save that you grant them. But obviously, in this case, what is the majority? 2 over here, that's not a majority. 3 over here, that's not a majority. Either way, that still wouldn't even be correct. The way that we do this is we allocate these 5 wounds to the nearest Termagant. Then we resolve whatever saves it gets, and once it's dead, or once we run out of wounds, then we either move on to the next Termagant if there's more wounds to allocate, or we're finished. So in this case, I've measured it beforehand. This Termagant is the closest, and he is getting a 4+ save. So what we do there is we put these 5 dice aside. That is our wound pool. And we'll take 1 die and roll it to see if he gets wounded. In this case, he makes a cover save, so he does not. The next die rolls, and he makes it. Now let's say that he failed that because I want to continue on. So he dies. So once he dies, we move on to the next nearest model, which is this one. Now if this was the next nearest model, we could have rolled 2 dice at a time because they're getting the same save until these guys had died. So for example, if these 2 are right here and we had 5 wounds, to save time, I'd pick up 2 dice and roll. Because look, 1 dies, and then I move on to the wound pool and just grab 1 more to continue with him. But that's not what happened in this case, so 1 is gone, and we've got 3 wounds remaining. So the next nearest Termagant is this guy, and he gets a 5+ cover save. So we take the next wound. If these 2 were the nearest, we could do it 2 at a time, but there's just 1, because he's the next nearest. And he makes a 5+ cover save, and we move on. And we're lucky there, so we're going to modify that so he dies. Then we move on to the next nearest Termagant, which is this guy, and we roll for the last one to see if he dies. In this case, he does. So let's just go back and do that again, fudging the rolls a little further so you can see what happens if that continued. Let's say these warriors got super lucky and actually managed to inflict 8 wounds. And let's say that the Termagants were really unlucky with their cover saves. So what would happen with these 8 wounds? Well, the first one's gone to this guy, who is the closest. We roll it, and we failed it, so he dies. The next closest is this one. We roll a 5+ cover. Let's say he fails that, so he dies. The next closest is this guy, so we roll a 4+ cover save. I'm getting very lucky here. Let's say he fails that, and he dies. The next closest is this guy over here, and so he gets the next wound, needs a 5+, and makes it. But let's say he fails it and dies. Well, now the next nearest is this guy and this guy, both of which do not have cover saves. So our next 2 wounds automatically kill these guys. We got to remember to remove those wounds from the wound pool. And then we've got, oh, looks like we had too many. We only needed 8, and I had 9 there. So we have 2 left. The next nearest is the guy in cover, so he gets to roll, and he fails and dies. And the very last one will go on the last model who's not in cover, and so he dies. If that seemed confusing, it's because this situation does not come up very often, where you have guys in multiple areas. What does come up often is having a squad that has multiple cover saves, but just having 2. For example, if the Termagants were in these ruins, and some of them were out in the open. That does happen quite often. But this situation where you have some in forests, some out in the open, and some in ruins, or something similar to that, is not a normal situation, which is why a lot of people don't understand the rules. So now let's talk about something called focus fire. Focus fire is a mechanism that you can use in order to ignore certain models with really good cover saves. For example, these warriors are looking at this and saying, okay, these guys are in ruins, I don't want to fire at them. These guys are in trees, I don't want to fire at them. I just want to kill the guys who are out in the open. The advantage to this rule is it allows you to ignore those cover saves. The disadvantage is that you'll only be able to kill the guys that you focus on. The way that focus fire works is simple. Before you roll to attack, or to roll to hit, you declare a certain cover save between 2+ to 6+, or even saying no cover save. And what happens there is you can only allocate wounds to the models who have an equal or worse cover save. So for example, if these guys say we're focus firing a 5+ cover save, what they're basically saying is we're only going to fire at guys who have a 5+ cover save or worse. So they'll only be firing at these 6 models. So when they roll the hit, if they manage to get 8 wounds and these guys horribly fail their cover saves, they cannot hurt these 2 over here because they did not focus fire on it. So let's do a demonstration of exactly how that would work. So they declare a focus fire of 5+. They roll to hit on 3s. They get 6 hits. Then they roll to wound on 3s. And they get unlucky, so I'm going to boost their roll a little bit and say they got 5 wounds. So now we allocate these wounds. The nearest model, let's actually put this guy a little further back. So the first 2 nearest models are guys in 5+ cover saves. So we take 2 wounds and we roll. And we get super unlucky, and both of them fail and die. So we continue with the wound pool, and the next nearest is this guy who does not have a cover save, so he dies. And then the next nearest, we'll say, is this guy, so he dies. And that takes another wound out. And the next nearest is the guy in cover, so he gets to roll and fails it and dies as well. Now, what I also could have done is said, I want to focus fire on those without a cover save, in which case only these 3 could die. You can't do it the opposite, where you only focus on guys with a really good cover save. I'm not quite sure why you'd want to do that, except maybe if there was an objective right here that you wanted these guys to die off of. So you choose a cover save, and wounds can only be allocated to models with a cover save equal to or worse than the one you say, but you can also choose no cover saves. That is an option that you have as well. So there you have it, a very important rule that I notice a lot of people getting wrong because it's a new mechanism in 6th edition. So go ahead, leave a comment below if you have any questions about multiple cover saves, or how to allocate cover saves, or about focus firing, or if you think I did something wrong or want some clarifications, post a comment as well. This is Matthew from MiniWarGaming. Stay tuned for more how to play rule tutorials, and actually let me know any other questions that you have about other rules that you're not quite sure of. Happy wargaming.